I didn't realize something was wrong until the week before Christmas, when the office felt too warm, too quiet, and too polite. That kind of politeness people use when they're hiding something. I'd worked at the company for 5 years, long enough to know the cycles. The spring layoffs, the summer crunch, the autumn sprint, and the December calm when everyone softened because the year-end bonuses were coming. That promise kept people from quitting mid-project. It kept them loyal, or at least quiet. This year, that loyalty had come from me more than anyone else. I'd spent months patching holes left by upper management, missed deadlines, overpromised deliverables, client hand-holding at midnight. I wasn't a hero. I just hated loose ends. And every time I stayed late, someone from the leadership team would stop by my desk with the same line. "You'll see this in your bonus, Mark. Trust me." I never pushed for more. I believed them. Not because they'd earned that trust, but because I needed to believe the effort meant something. December 18th, 9:07 a.m. That's when the email went out. Mandatory all hands. 4:30 p.m. Conference room B. No subject, no agenda. Just that. I had a sinking feeling before I even clicked it. The last time we had a meeting like that, they announced a restructuring that somehow restructured everyone except the executives. The day crawled. People whispered at the coffee machine, glanced at the conference room door like it was a courtroom. My team, who'd been breaking their backs on Q4, kept asking if I knew anything. I didn't. I just told them to breathe. At 4:30 sharp, we filed in. Rows of chairs, lukewarm soda on a plastic table, a projector screen that hadn't been calibrated since 2018. The executives stood at the front like judges. Our director, Lawson, carried a manila folder tucked under his arm. A stupid detail, but something in the way he held it set my nerves on edge. He cleared his throat. "I'll get straight to it. This year has been challenging. We faced unexpected expenses and shifting priorities. Because of that, we've had to make difficult decisions regarding the annual bonus structure." A couple of people stiffened. Someone exhaled too loudly. Lawson kept going. "Bonuses will be awarded to senior leadership only. Unfortunately, we don't have the budget to extend them company-wide this year." For a moment, no one reacted. Not because we accepted it, because none of us quite processed it. Then I felt something cold settle in my chest. We'd been promised bonuses since June, personally promised, repeatedly, and not in vague terms, actual numbers, percentages, projections built into their own Q4 reports. I knew the documents. I helped write half of them. One of my analysts, a quiet guy named Owen, raised his hand. "What about the overtime requests? The rush projects? We were told those were tied to bonus performance." Lawson smiled the practiced smile of someone who has rehearsed a lie. "We appreciate your commitment. Recognition comes in many forms." A few people looked at me, not for permission to react, more like they wanted to see if I was about to explode. But I didn't feel angry. Anger is sharp. This was dull, like something heavy settling on my shoulders. Recognition comes in many forms. It echoed in my head like a bad joke. Someone else muttered under their breath. A woman from accounting wiped her eyes quickly, hoping no one noticed. Someone knocked over a pen. The room felt too full and too empty at the same time. I asked one thing calmly. When did the decision change? Lawson shifted his weight. "It's been a developing situation." "Developing since when?" I pressed. "We hit all our targets, higher than projected. The revenue reports show—" "The details aren't relevant here." He cut in a little too fast. "Let's focus on moving forward." Moving forward. After breaking every promise that kept this place together. I didn't say anything else. There was no point. You can't negotiate with someone who's already rewritten the terms. The meeting wrapped. People left in small clusters, some silent, some furious. Owen looked like he wanted to punch a wall. My senior analyst stared at the floor like he was reading words no one else could see. I walked back to my desk, sat down, and stared at the line of emails we'd exchanged with leadership all year. Messages full of assurances, numbers, approvals, praise. All the places where they'd put promises in writing because they never expected anyone to look back. I scrolled until my finger hurt. That's when something shifted in me. Not rage, not even disappointment. Something quieter, colder. The moment when you finally understand you've been speaking a language no one else intended to honor. I closed my laptop gently, like I might break it otherwise. That night, while the office emptied, I sat alone under the fluorescent lights, thinking about how easy it had been for them to cut us out, how casually they'd taken credit for work they barely understood, how confidently they assumed we'd swallow it. And I realized something else. They weren't afraid of us. They didn't think we had options. They didn't think we paid attention. They were wrong, because while they were celebrating their senior leadership bonuses, I started remembering things. Documents, approvals, contradictory emails, budget shifts that never matched the reporting cycle. Things I had access to because they trusted me to keep the machine running while they collected the rewards. And as I sat there, the building nearly silent, one thought finally crystallized. If they weren't interested in honoring their promises to us, I didn't owe them silence anymore. I came in the next morning expecting the air to feel lighter after a night's sleep. It didn't. If anything, the office felt heavier, like everyone had aged 10 years between 5 p.m. and sunrise. People moved slower. Conversations died when a manager walked by. No one made eye contact with Lawson. He tried to pretend nothing had changed. He stood near the coffee machine laughing with the other directors, making small talk loud enough for the whole floor to hear. His voice had that brittle cheerfulness people use when they're scared of silence. I walked past them without a word. My team gathered around my desk. Owen leaned in first. Did they really just take everything? Looks like it, I said. Another analyst, Nora, crossed her arms so tightly her fingers went white. They said we exceeded projections. They said we couldn't have done it without you, Mark. Promises are cheap in December, I muttered. Nora gestured toward the conference room where the blinds were half closed. They're in there right now, planning the holiday party like nothing happened. For a second I watched the silhouettes inside. The executives were pointing at slides, chuckling, sipping from branded water bottles. It was surreal, like watching a parallel universe where loyalty still meant something. And then, because the world loves timing, the CFO stepped out holding a gift basket wrapped in gold cellophane. Director's Holiday Appreciation Package, he announced cheerfully, walking it to Lawson's desk. The entire floor froze. It wasn't the basket itself. It was the audacity, the timing, the careless way he set it down, like sprinkling salt into an open wound. But that was just the beginning. Around noon, I opened my inbox and found the updated department KPIs for Q4. I scanned them once, then again. The numbers didn't match the previous file, the one I had helped prepare 3 months earlier. Someone had raised the benchmarks after the fact, quietly, retroactively, and there it was, a justification for denying bonuses on paper. I didn't shout, I didn't stand up, I just stared at the screen, my pulse steady but slow, like my body knew something my mind hadn't caught up to yet. I opened the shared drive logs, looked for who modified the KPI file. 2 names popped up. Lawson and HR Director Collins. Timestamp last week. Reason: alignment with updated performance priorities. A lie so simple it bordered on lazy. That afternoon, I met with my team for our weekly sync. Nobody cared about workflows. Everyone was angry in their own way. Quiet anger, tired anger, the kind that sits behind the ribs and waits. I stayed here until 1:30 a.m. those last 2 weeks, Nora said. My husband thought something was wrong with me. And for what? They think we'll just swallow it, Owen added. Like always. I listened, and I saw it clearly. We weren't a team. They had turned us into disposable fuel. They'd built the entire year on our backs, and then denied we'd ever carried anything. After the meeting, I went to the break room. Lawson was there alone, fixing his tie in the reflection of the microwave door. He pretended not to see me, but couldn't help himself. "Rough day yesterday," he said, "but we'll push through. Appreciate your leadership." I looked at him, not with anger, but with a kind of detached clarity. "What was the real bonus budget?" I asked. He blinked. "That's confidential." "I helped write the projections, Lawson. I know the numbers. I'm asking what happened after." He straightened. Decisions had to be made at a higher level. "So the KPIs were adjusted after we hit them." His silence answered more honestly than anything he could have said. "This isn't personal, Mark," he finally offered. "It is when you tell people for a year that their work matters," I said, "and then change the rules because it's convenient." Annoyance flashed across his face. "Look, don't make a problem where there isn't one. Everyone is dealing with the same outcome." "Not everyone," I said quietly, glancing at the gift basket on his desk. His jaw tightened. "Let's stay professional." I walked out without replying. Professional. Another word used when someone wants you to stop noticing what they're doing. By late afternoon, the office felt like a deflated balloon. People worked, because that's what people do even when they're hurt. But every keystroke had a bitter edge. That's when I saw it. An email thread forwarded by mistake. My name wasn't supposed to be included. It was a chain between Collins from HR and Lawson. They were discussing narrative framing around the bonus cuts. Specifically, employees in Mark's team will accept the news more easily if he stays calm. His reaction sets the floor for expected behavior. I stared at those words so long the screen dimmed. So that was my role to them. A buffer. A tool. The person who makes exploitation look organized. And then silence. The kind that means something's gone wrong. Inside me, something very small clicked into place. Not rage, not revenge. Something quieter, heavier, clearer. They assumed I wouldn't push back. They assumed I didn't know how the back-end systems worked. They assumed I wasn't paying attention when budgets were reallocated and approvals were rubber-stamped, without timestamps, matching their own reports. They assumed wrong. On my way out that evening, I passed finance. The door was slightly open, lights still on. Their senior accountant, a guy I'd known for years, sat alone reviewing a year-end ledger. He looked up. "You heading out?" "Yeah," I said. "Long day." He hesitated, then lowered his voice. "Mark, I don't know the whole story, but I know this. The bonus budget wasn't gone. It was reclassified. Higher up, they moved it last quarter." My stomach tightened, not with shock, with confirmation. "How do you know?" I asked. He tapped the ledger. "Because I'm the one who processed the transfer request. It wasn't an emergency reallocation. It was planned." I nodded once, slowly, deliberately. "Thanks," I said. He didn't ask why I wanted to know. Smart man. Walking to my car that night, the cold air felt cleaner than the stale office air. My breath came out steady. Calm. Too calm. And that was the moment I stopped being the employee who tries to protect the company from its own incompetence. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. I didn't do anything dramatic that week. No slam doors, no speeches. I did what I'd always done. I opened my laptop, organized my work, and started building a system. First file, a simple folder on my desktop named Q4 Documents. Nothing suspicious. I dragged the original KPI file into it, the one from 3 months ago with the targets we'd agreed on, then the new one, the version they modified last week. Side by side, they looked almost identical. Same layout, same headings. If you didn't know what to look for, you'd miss it, but the targets had been nudged just enough to make success technically not achieved. I took screenshots too, not because I didn't trust the files, but because I knew people are more rattled by pictures. 2 spreadsheets, same date range, different numbers. It's hard to talk your way around that. Next, I pulled our email threads. Every time someone in leadership had written some version of, "You'll see this in your bonus," or "This will reflect positively in your year-end compensation," I flagged it. I didn't have to dig. They'd been careless. Promises in writing over and over because they never thought anyone would group them together. I exported them as PDFs and added them to the folder. During lunch, Owen sat down across from me in the break room, poking at his food. "Are we just letting this go?" he asked. "No," I said. "What are we doing then?" "I'm making sure that if we move with proof." He stared at me like he wasn't sure whether to be relieved or scared. "They'll fire you," he said finally. "Maybe," I replied, "but if I do this right, it won't be that simple." They thought I'd calm down by Monday. That evening, after most people had left, I walked down to finance again. The senior accountant, Paul, was still there. He lived in spreadsheets the way other people lived in their phones. "You said the bonus budget was reclassified," I said quietly. "Can you show me where it went?" He hesitated. Accountants hate conflict almost as much as they hate messy ledgers. "I can't leak internal data," he started. "I'm not asking for screenshots," I said. "Just help me understand the structure. Where would a bonus pool go if someone wanted to hide it without technically deleting it?" He rubbed his forehead. "It wouldn't disappear. It would be moved into a discretionary fund, usually coded under strategic initiatives or executive retention." "Is there a fund like that?" I asked. He let out a slow breath. "Yes. Created Q3. Same quarter your bonus projections were adjusted." I nodded. "Got it." I didn't push for more. I didn't need to. Context was enough. I added a note to my folder. Bonus pool reclassified as executive retentions, strategic initiatives. Q3. No accusations, just facts. At home that night, I didn't rant to anyone. I live alone, no one to perform for. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, the glow reflecting off an unpaid power bill and a half-empty mug of coffee gone cold. I Googled labor laws, wage theft, misrepresentation. I didn't trust random blogs, so I pulled up the official site for the state labor department, then another for a federal agency, then a local employment law firm with a decent track record. The next day, I called the firm during my lunch break. "I'm not looking to sue right this second," I told the receptionist. "I just need to know if what my company did is legal." They booked me for a short consultation that Friday after work. All week, the office got weirder. HR sent out a gratitude survey asking how valued we felt by leadership. People screenshot it and sent it to each other with dark jokes. Lawson started stopping by my desk more often, asking how the team was handling the transition, as if bonuses were a hurricane and he was the weatherman. "They're disappointed," I said, "and they're not stupid." He didn't like that answer. I could see it in the way his jaw clenched. But he just nodded and walked off. Friday came. At 5:30 p.m., instead of going home, I drove across town to a small office building with a shared lobby and too many fake plants. The employment lawyer looked like someone you'd ignore in a grocery store. Mid-40s, tired eyes, neutral suit. Exactly the type I wanted. I handed her a printed packet of my documents. Nothing sensitive, nothing that violated privacy. Just the original KPI file, the modified KPI file, the HR email about using my reaction to set behavior, quotes from leadership emails promising bonuses tied directly to specific work, a written summary of what Paul had told me, without naming him. She read in silence for a good 10 minutes. I watched her eyes track the pages. "Okay," she finally said, placing the stack down. "Let's separate feelings from facts. You feel betrayed. That's understandable. But here's what matters legally." I nodded. "Go on." "First, bonuses can be discretionary. If your contract says they're not guaranteed, the company has flexibility," she said. "That's the bad news." "And the good news?" I asked. She tapped the email about KPI changes. They also can't manipulate metrics after the fact in a way that effectively voids promised compensation, especially if there's a clear pattern and documentation that the bonus was used as an incentive to secure extra work. "And the reclassification of the budget?" I asked. "If you can show that funds were allocated for employee bonuses and then quietly moved into an executive pool while telling employees the money doesn't exist, regulators get interested, particularly if overtime and additional work were solicited based on those promises. So what does that mean practically? I asked. She leaned back. Practically? It means you have the skeleton of a case, possibly more if other employees corroborate. You can file a complaint with the labor board, and depending on the outcome, you and your team could recover what you were denied. The company may also face penalties. That's if I sue, I said. That's if you want to go nuclear, she corrected. There's also the middle ground, a formal complaint through the appropriate agency or an attorney letter that makes it clear you're not alone and not guessing. I thought for a moment. If I file a complaint, can they fire me for it? I asked. They can try, she said. But retaliation for making a good faith complaint is illegal. Again, if you document everything and don't steal confidential data, they'll have less room to maneuver. We scheduled a follow-up. I left with something I hadn't had in weeks, a framework. Monday morning, I called my team into a meeting. Just us, no managers. I'm going to ask you something, I said, and I need honest answers. No pressure either way. They watched me like I was about to pull a grenade. I've spoken to an employment lawyer, I said. What the company did, changing KPIs after the fact, moving bonus funds upstairs, using written promises to get extra work, might not be just shady. It might be illegal. Silence. Then Nora spoke first. What can we do? She asked. I can file a complaint on my own, I said, or we can file a collective one. If you join me, your names go on it. That's more powerful, but also riskier. There's protection against retaliation, but I won't lie. It could get uncomfortable. Owen rubbed his temple. Do you think it'll change anything? Yes, I said. At minimum, it forces them to explain themselves to someone who doesn't work for them. One by one, they answered. Some wanted time. Some said no. 3 said yes, immediately. Nora, Owen, and another analyst who'd been quietly suffering through extra shifts to cover childcare. We spent the rest of the week documenting. Not gossip, not feelings, facts. Hours logged, emails sent. Overtime approved with the explicit promise of bonus recognition. KPI dashboards showing that we'd exceeded the original targets. Calendar invites to meetings where leadership praised us because they assumed the system would protect them later. When the packet was ready, I uploaded a sanitized version to a private, encrypted drive, then used the official Labor Board portal to file a complaint. Names, details, attachments, no exaggerations, no theatrical language, just a clear description of what had happened and how. Then I did one more thing. I used the company's own ethics hotline. Most people think those lines are fake. Sometimes they are. But corporations hate the appearance of not having one. I filled out an anonymous report anyway, referencing the same facts, knowing full well that if the complaints ever crossed desks, someone would put 2 and 2 together and see my fingerprints on the structure. When I hit send, nothing exploded. No alarms, no you're fired emails. The office looked the same the next day. People still shuffled papers, printed reports, microwave food that smelled like regret. The first sign came 3 days later. HR emailed a reminder of internal values and scheduled one-on-one check-in conversations with members of our department. Lawson paced more. The CFO stopped visiting the floor with gift baskets. Then quietly, an unfamiliar car with government plates appeared in the parking lot one morning. 2 people in plain clothes walked in with visitor badges and were escorted straight to a conference room. No one said who they were. They didn't have to. By afternoon, the senior accountant messaged me. They're asking questions, his text read, not just about numbers, about intent. I looked around the office. The managers were suddenly too busy. HR's door stayed shut. People whispered again, but this time it wasn't about bonuses, it was about consequences. I realized I'd lit a fuse I couldn't put out, even if I'd wanted to. They thought we were just employees. Now they were about to learn what happens when the people holding up the building decide to stop pretending they don't see the cracks. The fallout didn't happen all at once. Corporations don't implode like buildings. They sag first, slowly under the weight of their own decisions. It began with an email on a Tuesday morning, the kind written by someone pretending not to panic. Effective immediately, an internal audit will be conducted to ensure compliance with compensation structures and labor practices. No mention of complaints, no mention of investigators, no mention of why immediately suddenly mattered, but the tone gave everything away. The next day, the auditors moved into a conference room like they were subletting it. They requested documents, spreadsheets, approval chains, KPI histories, access logs. I didn't have to point them anywhere. They knew exactly what to ask for. And because everything I'd submitted was real, they found the same cracks I had. For the first time in months, my team worked without being bothered. No one from management hovered. HR stopped scheduling check-in conversations. Lawson didn't even look at us when he passed our row. By Friday, the CFO's office door was shut from the inside. He stayed there for hours with the auditors. People passed by pretending not to stare. The next week, he was gone. Resigned, officially. Cleared out his desk at night, didn't say goodbye to anyone. His parking spot sat empty, the snow flattening its shape. A few days after that, HR Director Collins vanished in the same quiet way. No farewell parties, no email full of smiley face emojis. Just an announcement from the CEO, "We thank her for her service." When someone says that about an HR director during an audit, it means they're already rewriting history. But I wasn't expecting what came next. On Wednesday, Lawson called me into a conference room. His voice tried to sound steady. His hands didn't bother. He gestured toward the chair across from him. "Mark, I'm hoping we can reset things." "Reset?" I repeated, sitting down. "Yes, there's been some misunderstanding regarding performance structures. Tensions have been high. I think we can agree things escalated unnecessarily." I watched him for a moment, not with anger, but with the calm recognition of someone finally seeing the whole picture. "You're under review," I said quietly. "That's why you're talking to me." He flinched, barely, but enough. "I'm cooperating fully with the auditors," he insisted, "and I'd appreciate it if you reaffirm to your team that everything is being handled appropriately." I shook my head. "My team doesn't need reassurance," I said. "They need honesty, something they haven't gotten from leadership all year." His expression tightened. "Mark, you're playing a dangerous game." "I didn't change the KPIs," I said. "I didn't reclassify bonus funds. I didn't promise compensation in writing and then erase the evidence. I'm not playing anything." For the first time since I'd known him, Lawson didn't have a polished exit line. He just sat there, shoulders heavy, staring at the table like it might have answers. I let the silence settle. Then I stood. "We're done here," I said. I left him with that. The same words I'd left the meeting with weeks earlier, except this time the weight wasn't on me. It was on him. 2 weeks later, an official email went out to the entire company. Following the audit's preliminary findings, adjustments will be made to the annual compensation disbursements. Impacted employees will receive updated information shortly. People read it 3 times, trying to figure out what it meant. Then a second email arrived, this one only to our department. It listed numbers, actual numbers. My team stared at their screens in disbelief. Nora's hand flew to her mouth. Owen whispered, "No way." They weren't just giving back what they owed. They were giving more. Late fees, penalties, retroactive recognition based on the original KPI targets. It was the first honest thing they'd done in a long time. My own notification came 10 minutes later, a deposit scheduled for the end of the week, a number I hadn't expected to see. Fair, clean, deserved. But something in me didn't move. Not excitement, not satisfaction, just quiet comprehension. This wasn't a gift. It was a correction. Later that afternoon, the CEO called a company-wide meeting. He spoke carefully, choosing each word like it was being held hostage. We acknowledged that certain performance processes were handled inconsistently. We are committed to rebuilding trust. Leadership changes will be announced soon. Leadership changes, a corporate euphemism as old as time. At 5 p.m., Lawson walked out of the building carrying a cardboard box. No speech, no handshake. Just a man realizing that systems built on quiet exploitation eventually collapse under their own weight. He didn't look at me as he passed. I didn't expect him to. The next morning, I drafted a letter of resignation. Plain language, no accusations, no victory laps. Just this. I appreciate the opportunities I've had here, but it's time for me to move on. I printed it, signed it, and brought it to the interim HR rep, a woman I'd never met who looked like she'd been hired solely to clean up the mess. She read it, and then looked up. "We were hoping you'd stay," she said gently. "I know," I replied, "but I'm not staying out of obligation, and I'm not staying to rebuild what someone else broke." She nodded without pushing. 2 weeks later, I finished my last day. My team took me out for lunch. They didn't say, "You saved us," or "We owe you." They didn't have to. Their relief spoke for them. Their dignity returning spoke louder. That evening, while I packed the last of my things into a cardboard box, the same model Lawson had carried, I heard the soft buzz of my phone. A message from the senior accountant, Paul. "They're doing a full restructure. Should have happened years ago." "Glad you're still there," I wrote back. "Somebody has to keep the books honest," he replied. He wasn't wrong. My new job offer came a week later. A competitor. Better pay. Clear expectations. Actual transparency. During the interview, the hiring manager said something that stuck with me. "We heard you handled a difficult situation with integrity." I didn't ask how. Auditors talk, professionals talk. More importantly, the kind of work I did leaves footprints. I accepted the offer. The first morning in the new office felt peaceful. No tension, no forced smiles, no brittle holiday emails, just work. Real work. Work that didn't require sacrificing pride. After I set up my desk, I sat for a minute, letting the quiet settle. A clean start, not revenge, not triumph, just balance restored. People think justice feels like fireworks, but the truth is it feels like breathing normally again. It feels like standing somewhere you don't have to shrink to fit. It feels like leaving a building lighter than you entered it, not because you escaped, but because you chose the door yourself. And that's the part none of them understood. I didn't ruin their system. I just stopped being part of it. Everything else collapsed on its own.